Good evening, Cheese Room, and welcome to another Monday night show. Groundhog Day, another Conte meltdown, another abject performance, another group of panel members that are pulling their hairs out. Let's go through it. Gibbo, how are you on this Monday night? I bet you can't wait for this therapy session, can you?
I've been looking forward to this, mate. I even messaged Becky on Saturday after the game saying, going to have plenty to talk about and it's getting better. So, yeah, it's going to be an eventful show, I think, mate, and I am looking forward to it. Come on.
Excellent. And in my bottom right, Monday night regular, Becky, how are you? And I bet you're glad you didn't go to Southampton this weekend.
Yeah, I had Mother's Day things to do, and yeah, I was. It's a bit awkward for me to get to Southampton, but yeah, I was genuinely. I just think it was all just I watched the game. I was lucky enough to watch the game, but I'm in Shrewsbury. I'm my parents, and then obviously the goals go in, and you think it's fine, and you think it's not, and then everything afterwards, and then I'm driving home in the evening and listening to it in the radio and listening to the interview, and then just everything afterwards, and then Gibbo's messaging me, and I'm going, has he gone yet? And here we are on Monday. Yeah, just there's never a day where it's dull. There's never a day where it's dull. We've always got content because of the way Spurs are at the moment.
Yeah, we've always got content because we've always got Conte. Jack, from the other side of the pond, are you feeling the heat over there? Is it everywhere in America?
Actually, it's very cold right now. We've got a deep freeze, but yeah, I'm pretty warm. I have to say, I'm pretty warm right now. I'm ready for this.
Good. Well, let's get into it, folks. Normal housekeeping. 19 of you already watching. We're 1 minute 59 seconds in. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you don't already subscribe. Great channel, great content, great show ahead of you. Looking forward to tonight. And the obvious place to start, very, very briefly, is with the game. 3-3 draw against Southampton. Jack, did you watch the game?
Yes, I did. And my son was very close to. He lives in Southampton, and he was very close to going to the game. Fortunately, did not. It would have been the second away game he's gone to, both at Southampton, both where fights broke out after the match, and both unfortunate results. But he avoided going, fortunately, at the last minute, so it worked out.
Yeah. Becky, did you see the game, or did you stay away from it?
Yeah, so I saw it on, like I said, I was at my parents in Shrewsbury and watched it. And it's I've forgotten how tricky it is when you've got your parents that have got Sky Sports News on and you're watching it, trying to kind of make the two sync up. But it should have been a formality, and as in typical Tottenham style at the moment, it wasn't. But even I didn't expect what was going to happen at the press conference after that. You know, he's had times, hasn't he, where he's got really cross, but that was like on another level.
Yeah, it's very remiss of very similar to what we saw at Middlesbrough last year, Becky, I thought. But we'll get into all of that. So, Gibbo, starting lineup, any surprises for you? Happy with the starting lineup?
No, I think it's pretty much what we all thought it would be. Good to see Porro starting again away from home. I thought there was a possibility he could have brought Royale in, but he started Porro again, and I thought Porro did okay. He looked okay, but I mean, the first half was pretty tepid, wasn't it? It was, I mean, on my stream, the feed, the commentary was in front of the actual game. So I just turned the volume down. So I literally had the game of football on in front of me with no commentary.
And I had it in Arabic, I think.
Yeah.
I had it in Arabic, you know, when they don't breathe the whole commentary and you're like, wow.
And it was just a game. It looked a very poor game of football between, and I don't think Tottenham ultimately are a poor team, but that's how the first half looked. It looked like two poor teams, just passes going astray, people hoofing it in the air and shanking, passes and missed chances. Like Porro had the two chances, didn't he? Cut in, even though it was on his wrong foot. You think, oh my God, mate, pigeons are all scattering when he's shooting. But so it was but we went in 1-0 up. We went in 1-0 up, decent goal. And you think, this is dire, this is dull, but we're winning.
Yeah. No, I think the first half, been the same all season, hasn't it? It was a pretty turgid first half in terms of the quality. Not able to really seemingly break down what I thought was a very poor Southampton side, but we got that goal in the extra time, added time in the first half. Jack, Eddie, what did you make of that first half?
I think you guys laid it out. It was typical, sitting there just waiting for something to happen or waiting for something to break down or something. You're just kind of waiting and watching for hoping some sort of excitement. And again, there were a couple opportunities, like you're saying, and Porro was lively the whole match. I've got his stats up in front of me. Actually had a really very good game. I think he's come along. He looks like a very good signing. But yeah, it was just typical first half until that last, very nice piece of quality that ended in the goal. I mean, actually that sequence of play is actually quite good. Now, clearly, if we were Southampton fans, we'd be wondering why our left back is all the way inside the penalty area, double teaming a striker and leaving him wide open. But still, it was a nice piece of play. But no, the first half was up until that moment pretty poor.
The thing also that kind of affected the first half was all the injuries, wasn't it? Because they, I think they said, didn't they, on commentary, there were 4 players that had to be substituted in the first sort of 30 minutes.
I think we had 9 minutes of extra time or 7 or something, pretty long time.
That affects the kind of flow, if there is any flow, doesn't it, of the game as well.
That's a notable point of the first half, actually, losing Richarlison really early on. I mean, Tottenham social media, unsurprisingly, have been very low-key since the game. Has anyone got any insight into the Richarlison injury?
Apparently, he got injured in the warm-up. I've read that he wanted to play on, which some people are arguing was selfish of him. But some people, I would say, would be like, he's so desperate to play and to play himself into the game that he's prepared to play with what I think is a shoulder injury.
Oh, I heard it was a calf.
I think the medical team should, if he's not fit to play, they should be saying, look, he can't play. I mean, we've got 5 subs now, so you can sort of get away with it, but
it's always going to be the player, though, isn't it? It's like when they have this sort of concussion. If the player's saying he's fine, then they're going to... I know what you're saying, but I can understand equally when the player... And Richarlison is so desperate to play his way back in, isn't he? But yeah, I think he lasted 6 minutes, didn't he? And he was an uncontested injury as well.
Yeah. Conte makes a point, doesn't he? He often
that's probably selfish.
Wanting players... but Conte makes a point to players about saying, make themselves available. Are they fit enough to play? They need to make themselves available, etc. And I wonder whether that played into Richarlison's mind a little bit here. If he was to go back in and say, I'm not right, boss, is that going to impact on his future opportunities when he's desperate to play?
I agree.
And also in that first half, we lost on 37 minutes Ben Davies. And again, anyone got any insight into that injury?
That one was a hamstring, I think.
He looked like a hammy, didn't it? They haven't said anything, but they've both pulled out of their respective national squads, haven't they? So,
yeah. And I think did the Ben Davies injury, did it change the flow of the game? Do we think, Gibbo?
Well, Perisic can't defend, can he? So if you look at it like their sort of first goal straight after half time. He's just not very... Yeah, I mean, Ben Davies has been playing well, hasn't he? So he's a little bit more... He is more defensively solid. And I think he's been half decent going forward as well, to be fair to him. But, I mean, that affected the flow for us, didn't it? But Southampton lost both centre-backs, which are like 2 key areas on the pitch, and they lost 2 of them. And it didn't really... I mean, because they weren't great all the way through, but they just battled and put it in, didn't it? So that didn't really affect their flow. So we don't sort of want to blame Davies going off, because we had a decent, really a good enough replacement to bring on, didn't we? In Perisic, you'd like to think that he is good enough, and Davies has been good, but Perisic should have been good enough to come on. And obviously, we went 3-1 up and he scored, but I'm not sure the injuries really affected us. They should have affected Southampton's injuries, should have affected them more than ours affected us.
Yeah. Into the second half, Harry Kane obviously got the second goal, great header on 65 minutes. And then we quickly went 3-0 up with Perisic on his first goal for Tottenham. At that point, I guess my view wasn't a Jack was yours to say game's over, game's done.
Are you asking me? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
No, I've
oh, really?
No, because I mean, I've watched this team play, and I don't ever feel like any lead is safe. And I didn't feel the way the play was going. I didn't feel like we didn't have control. You know, I was frustrated as little. I mean, yes, scored 3 goals, but I still don't feel like we put enough pressure on them, and that we looked suspect and weak and nervous in the back. I didn't feel good about it at all. I was glad. I was like, okay, you know, we should, but I wasn't ready to say, okay, well, I had my own match at right after that game. As soon as the game was over, I was in the car and out. But I wasn't confident. I stuck around to the very end.
The other thing as well is that Southampton equalised, didn't they? So pretty much straight after they came out of half time.
Yeah.
That's right, the thing that was frustrating, is that we go in and then, you know, you think that we are going to kick on from this, and then, you know, defending was really bad for their equaliser. You know, Romero's all over the place, Dier's all over the place.
Becky, I put a clip on our WhatsApp group earlier. I found it on Twitter, and it was, I think Hojbjerg was in the change rooms, the much maligned Hojbjerg by Davo. And he was in there telling players, look, let's concentrate. Then they go out there, and I mean, that just sums it up at the minute, though, doesn't it? That just tells you, that just sums Spurs up at the minute, that they're just a bit of a shambles when it comes to it. They got not a lot of leadership on or off the pitch at the minute.
Has anyone seen a replay? I still feel like I never got a good look at it. It seemed like Walcott was offsides, but it was no check, and I saw one replay on NBC, and that was it. Did anyone ever get any shots of it at all? I mean, it doesn't matter. The defending was atrocious. I was just curious. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, Theo Walcott always seems to bite us, doesn't he? The penalty at 90 plus 3. Becky, penalty, what was your take on that? Did you see it as a clear penalty or?
No. Harsh? So we go back a bit as well. Perisic's goal, I said straight away, I went straight on Twitter and went, why didn't he celebrate? And people were saying, it's because he didn't think the game was over. I think there's probably a bit more to it than that. We're 3-1, and then it's 3-2, isn't it? And then you're thinking we are doing deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I've tweeted this already. He makes the substitutions again, where he makes defensive substitutions, very similar to what he did at Wolves. Takes Kulusevski and Porro off, which he did at Wolves, and then deeper and deeper and deeper. And obviously, I don't think I was watching it at this point, but Sky Sport News was saying there's been a VAR, and Emerson is our kind of pundit person. Hold on, and he's going, it's gone to VAR. And even Emerson is saying it's never a penalty. And then I put the stream on, see it, and think it's very, very harsh, because Sarr had only just come on. He wasn't looking at the player. It wasn't one of those where he looks for the player and then kind of does the air kick. Those of you who have not seen it, he just sort of kicks the air and supposedly makes contact with the player, and he goes down. But it was just, I was interested in watching back today. They were moaning in Scotland about one that was very similar, where there was like barely any contact and he goes down, and it was there's just so little contact involved, and the fact that kind of the player's coming behind Sarr as he sort of clears it. And don't get me wrong, it was a bit Aurier-like in the old days, where he just looked a bit flappy, but I just thought it was extremely harsh.
It was ridiculous penalty, wasn't it?
Yeah. And the only person I've seen that says it was given is on that ref watch today. That person, that Gallagher guy's gone,
Dermot Gallagher.
I haven't seen one person say at all that it was a penalty.
We're going to get into the consequences of the result and everything that's happened since, because we can't not. But if that penalty wasn't given and we win that game 3-2, are we where we are now, or is it a different place? I don't know if I've worded that question well, but you get my point. If we win that game 3-2, does the Conte meltdown happen?
No. I think the wheels would have been set in motion, Craig. I think Paul Muir, who's in the chat tonight, put on our pod. He thinks it was he had it in his mind ready, and I think he's setting the wheels in motion, and I think everything happened and it all came to a head Saturday, so he could go the full hog. Do you get what I mean? I think it would have just been he's slowly trying to engineer his move away.
They are, but things are never as heated after a win, are they? If lots of people saying about the Forest game. I said this last week. People were saying about it papered over the cracks. Morale is better when it's a win, even if it's a poor win. And managers don't get sacked after a win, do they? And managers don't leave by mutual consent after a win. So he's probably grateful it happened because it meant, like you said, he could engineer and leave because otherwise he'd be here for another month.
Because we'll get into this, guys. But it's like, some of us have said for a while, I don't think he wants to be here. Like, I do genuinely think, when we'll talk about it all later, but I think he does want to be relieved of his duties. So we'll get into that. But Becky just said, I think the result, not it played into his hands, because I bet he was annoyed and I bet he has been thinking this for a long time. But I think that happened and it's like, boom, straight into it.
Do you agree, Jack? Do you see it as manipulative, if you like, of Conte to use the situation in this way?
Yeah, I think the question of whether he would have unloaded that way after a win, it's an excellent question, and it's great for these sorts of talks because there's no right or wrong answer because you'll never know. But I clearly, he gave a preview in the Sky Sports like pitch side type stuff of what he was doing, and then he came into the press conference, and again, I think I think there were a total of 4 questions asked. It's not like he was prompted or people drew him out. I mean, he came in with that ready to go. And that wasn't, and as he said, he's been trying to hide it for a long time. So it's been sitting there waiting on the shelf, just ready to pull right off and then throw it out there.
Yeah.
Which is all very bizarre when he's only been back, is it like 2 games? Like he's been building it up, sat at home in Italy. That's the other thing I think's weird.
I think he has those. I think it's been coming, hasn't it? It's been coming.
All right. Well, just before we get into Conte, then I just want to backtrack to the game. Just a couple of players I just want to touch on very quickly. Pierre, Flappy Bird, Gibbo. I thought for me he was pretty poor against Southampton. I mean, a lot of players were pretty poor. This Davo's asked me to ask you if you can reconcile the fact that he's not playing well at the moment, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, of course I can. I'm not like, if he has a bad game, he has a bad game, doesn't he? All players have bad games. And is he playing well? No, not a lot of Spurs players are playing. He has good games and he has bad games. But, like I've always said, most of the time he's available. He'll have more assists than anyone. Probably score more, any of the other midfielders. He'll score more than any of the other midfielders. He'll get more minutes than any of the other midfielders. And he's just always available. And at the minute, he's probably, people will say Skipp, but he's been our most reliable midfielder. Bentancur's got injured. We need him. He's in there, and that's it. But can he be upgraded on? Of course he can. But he has had a decent season for us behind Kane. He's one of the Bentancur and him. Probably been the 2 better players. So, I'm not the sort of person that, people who will Levy out, I'm Levy out, but I just take it as it is. But there's some people who, if their burger comes cold at the ground, they'll be like, well, this is all Levy's fault. So, I can admit stuff like that. Other people can't. But
I think this frustrating thing about Hojbjerg is whenever you see sort of replays back of goals, he tends to be the person that was intercepted or 2 yards away from the ball. I can still remember the Sheffield United goal, and I remember seeing the replays back of Southampton where he doesn't make the interceptions. And that's the bit that he's an easy target then, because that's when people are replaying that over and over and over again and he's there. There might be other players out of shot you can't even see. That's why, But none of them are playing well. None of them are playing well.
He is an easy target. He sort of gets involved in a lot of stuff, doesn't he? He's always... he's putting out fires, running from A to B. Probably shouldn't be doing that, but he's there to be shot down. That's what all players are. But I think he's all right. I think he gets a lot of stick, and I don't think a lot of it's right. But
Jack, does Romero get a free pass from the fan base? Does his performances warrant what he, the forgiveness he gets?
I don't spend a ton of time on Spurs socials just because it's not pleasurable for me. Yeah. So, but I do know that I've heard, particularly in where I do pick up a little bit is in our Slack, our Patreon Slack chat, and so I could definitely see a little bit of a turn there. I think after the red card in Milan, I think a lot of people, I even saw comments like, I'm about over Romero. I thought that was harsh, and I think that anyone who thinks he should be shipped out is being a little emotional. Quite frankly, I don't think that guy should go anywhere. But I do think that people might get a little tired of. Now, I do think that he had some interesting comments that almost indirectly seem to be taking shots at Conte on his social media. Something about, I love my team, I love my club, we will get back up, I expect to be here for years to come. Something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what it was, something to that effect. And so I think that people are getting upset with Romero. No, again, he didn't have a great game. I mean, it wasn't as shocking as Dier's performance, but he didn't have a great game. No one in the back line. Well, I mean, actually, other than the first goal that Longley and Perisic were very culpable for, he had, he won 6 of 6 tackles. Longley did. He actually didn't have too bad a game. I mean, Dier was dribbled past 2 or 3 times, and Romero, I think, only won 1 of his 3 tackles, a couple turnovers, lowest of the recoveries of any of the back line. So he didn't have a great game. But no, I think that if people are bailing on Romero, your ire is focused in the wrong areas.
Interesting.
Yeah, and following on from what you said there about how Spurs have only really tweeted players' tweets or Instagram posts, haven't they? So I think Porro tweeted something, didn't they? And then they've shared that. That's all they've done and been very quiet. But today, after Romero did that sort of, we will try and we will keep going until we can and we won't stop trying. He's then tweeted in London with the international squad with something like something along the lines
glad
of
to be somewhere
where we love playing or be loved playing or something. It's like, God.
Oh, really?
I didn't see that.
He's used the word love, definitely. Loving playing or being loved playing, something like that.
Yeah, I did like his Instagram post though. When he talked about the fact he's only been at the club for a short time. He said all the right things for me. To be fair,
and he isn't usually one that comes out and does that sort of thing. Like Kane does the videos, doesn't he? And he comes out and stuff. Because Sonny's quite quiet. He doesn't tend to do anything like that either.
Yeah, no. So game ended 3-3. We had a chance to go third in the league. We didn't go third in the league. We stayed fourth. Then Conte come out and faced the press in what was a rather pretty innocuous press conference. Just before I get your thoughts, I just wanted to play a couple of clips. The first one I'll play just where Conte specifically talks about the players, and then we'll discuss that. So,
in one situation, I think that it's much better now to go into the problem, okay? Because the problem is that for another time we show that we are not a team. We are 11 players that go into the pitch, and I see selfish players. I see players that don't want to help each other, don't put the heart. And first of today, I prefer to hide the situation and to try to speak, to try to improve the spirit situation with the words, with a lot of situation, because about tactical or technical aspect, this one situation. The most important thing, if you want to become a strong team, if you want to become competitive, you want to fight to win, is the desire, the fire that you need to have in your eyes, in your heart. And you have to show this in every moment,
Wow. He didn't hold back his thoughts on the Spurs players there. Becky, what did you make to that first segment of the press conference, and particularly his reference towards the players not being a team?
Is this because is this the part where he says they all the time, or is that the bit later on? I just think after him having a go at Richarlison last week about not using we and I and all of that business, and then he kind of flips into that. The thing that got me, I have seen it in snippets and different bits of it. It's just the kind of the anger behind it, and I get people saying it's like all the frustration that's kind of built up, but that's the sort of thing you do behind closed doors. There's been a few times since you think about what you would do in your own profession, you know, and how you kind of deal with people in your own profession. And it's like we said at the top of the show, you just can't do that and say that about people that you work with and expect to then get some kind of working arrangement with them moving forward. You know, it just seemed very, very public. And that's the thing for me, which I tweeted about yesterday, that, you know, I do think it's time for him to go. I wanted it to work. I've said all this before. You know, he's having a go at players, so apparently being selfish. Now, is he referring to Richarlison? And, you know, we've said this before, do things get lost in translation a little bit? But if he's referring to people like Son and Kane there, then they're some of the people who have been there the longest, but have also bled for the team, and to kind of imply that it's those as well, because he doesn't clarify which people he's referring to. You know, we have to make our own assumptions, don't we? And I just think some of that was just very misguided, really. And like I said, if you came out and said all of those things about people that you work with, to then go and work with them again is just not possible. And, you know, with managers, when they call out the players, it never ends well. They never last very long. And, you know, I'm reading in the comments, and I've read on Twitter since, you know, people saying, oh, he's doing it because he wanted to get sacked. But like I just said a minute ago, you know, he's had ill health this year. He's been away. He's now come back. And then it was like an explosion that's been built up. I just don't think, I'm not sure what he thought he was going to achieve from it, unless he was trying to get sacked.
Jack, what was your take on that segment of the press conference?
Well, you know, first of all, back to your point, I mean, you know, if I have to play armchair therapist, I can't imagine that his intention wasn't anything other than to get sacked. I don't know. You know, it's kind of like coming into your boss and say, with all due respect, I think you're shit, mate. Right. Oh, but I said with all due respect. I mean, you know, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, you just can't do that. That, to your point, that's not how you fix things. That was a bomb thrown into that club, and I don't know how you think anything else. I mean, to the point that he makes, you know, we talked a little bit about this. I mean, when he talks about selfish players, who is he talking about? Right, that's the first thing I'm thinking about, right?
Yeah.
So if
he said 11 players. He said 11 players, selfish players.
Right, which means, you know, Forster's self. It means Forster's selfish. I guess that means, you know, we've got a small group of players that have been here since Poch was fired, that are not including the people out on loan, but, you know, you've got Kane's son, Hugo, who wasn't there, Dier, Davies, Lucas, who didn't play, Sanchez, Sessegnon, who's hurt. I mean, you know, who are we talking about? I mean,
other thing as well is there was 14 players, wasn't there, on Saturday, because there was 2 subs, and then there was 2 subs after that, so that's 15. So there's 15 players. At what point, it's like people putting in the chat, 11 players are on the field. At what point, which 11 players on the field? Because in total there were 15 players that played.
I mean, this issue of selfishness, I don't understand what that is coming from, unless it's selfishness in Italian translates differently. I don't know where the selfishness comes from. Now, when he talks about mentality, when he talks about fire, when he talks about not winning the battles and that sort of stuff, you know, my reaction, you know, is I go down this list: Colchester, Moura, Zagreb, Norwich, Forest, Middlesbrough, Sheffield, West Ham, Southampton, and that's not the entire list.
Yep.
So then I can say that's since the 14-15 season, right? That also includes 2 failed title challenges, 2 FA Cup semi-final losses, 2 EFL Cup semi-final losses, 2 EFL Cup final losses, and 1 CL Champions League Cup final loss, right? So it's not like they haven't been there, but consistently, you know, there are moments where they just don't. The team is I mean, hell, we bought 29 players over the last 3 managers, right? So what is going on that the mentality is a problem? Because he's not the first manager to bring it up. So I'm curious. I mean, I think what he did was atrocious. I mean, I wouldn't put up with it if I were in charge of the club. He would have been gone. But there's something going on that I just can't figure out with this club, and it's an inability to show up in the really big moments that don't include Manchester City. I mean, I don't know.
And that won't last forever.
Am I wrong?
That won't last forever. There'll be a time where they beat us, and that'll be gone.
Yeah. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I don't think you are, Jack. I think you're spot on, and that's to Conte's point, isn't it? That actually they don't show up when they need to show up. They don't perform in these critical games when the pressure's on. When that opportunity to go third, we chuck away the result. Yeah. Give us your view on it. I know you've got.
That one not so much. I find the selfish bit hard. I think that's a lot of what he said. I totally agree with. You know, I've said on Slack group before and stuff like that. Players always get away with it. Players always get away with it all the time, and the coaches and the owners do take a lot of flack. Now I'm Conte out. I'm not a Levy or Enic in it. I'm not a massive Enic out or whatever. But he's right when he's saying the coaches and the board get it, but the players don't. And he's right. He's right to call out the board. I think the calling the players selfish, that bit could, and they're not doing it. That's about, I don't know if that's more on that game. Did he say today I saw 11 selfish players? So that type of thing, I think should be done behind closed doors. You can managers usually stick up for their players over that. And if I was Kane, I'd be walking into him going, selfish, mate, I've just bagged my 23rd goal of the season today to paper over the cracks of some of our really poor, dull performances where we've sat back and not played to our strengths. So selfish. And if I was Son, I'd be saying, I've had a bad season, but I'm playing a style, I'm playing a way that isn't to my strengths. And other players could say that. But if he's seen that on that game, that's fair enough. Say that behind closed doors. The stuff I really agree with Conte is when he comes in later on and the culture of the players. Because I do think there is a slight... I mean, I don't know if we got that footage.
Yeah, let's go to it now. So we'll perfectly stream this in, so we'll show that. This one's just short of 3 minutes, so let's go.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know, because they are used here. They're used here. Don't play for something important. Yeah. And, they don't play. They don't want to play under pressure. They don't want to play under stress. Yeah, it's easy in this way. And Tottenham story is this: 20 years that there is the owner and never won something. But why? Only for the fault is only for the club or for every manager that stay here. And I have seen the manager that Tottenham had on the bench. You risk to disrupt the figure of the manager and to protect the other situation in every moment. And now, until now, I try to hide the situation, but now no, because I repeat, I don't want to see what I have seen today, because this is unacceptable. Also for the respect for the fans. They follow us, pay the tickets, and to see the team another time, to have this type of performance, for me, I repeat, this is unacceptable. And we have to think a lot. We have to think a lot about this.
Last one, please, guys. Thank you. Antonio, last week you said that you saw the fire in the eyes of your players again. What has changed between now and this game, and how much is it your responsibility to motivate them?
I said that I want to see the fire, not that I have seen. It's different.
Right.
I said that I want to see the fire into the eyes. I want to see the fire into the heart. I want to see the right spirit, okay? And not only in the training session, into the pitch. Because here you have to make the difference. And I'm not seeing this. And until now, I try to hide the situation. But now, there are 10 games to go, and something thinks that we can fight. We can fight for what? With this spirit, with this attitude, with this commitment. For what? For the 7th, 8th place, 9th place? I'm not used to this position. I'm really upset. And everybody has to take the responsibility, not only the club, not only the manager, the staff. The player has to be involved in this situation. Because it's time to change the situation if Tottenham wants to change. If they want to continue in this way...
Gibbo,
I mean,
start with you.
I mean, to be fair, mate, like, I don't like it when he says they. You know, I know where he's coming from, but, you know, this group, my group of players and stuff could, you know, the language he could have used would be better. Obviously, he's angry, but it's just like, he is right, mate. Like, we've come close so many times, and there is a culture where we can't get across the line, and he's right there. And that culture must come from within, because it's come from before him. And I also think that when you do go higher, I do think the board, obviously, the priority is that top 4. They want to win trophies, I'm sure they do. But I'm sure they're saying, but we've got to get top 4. That is the main thing. And winning is a habit. So you start winning trophies, that becomes habit, and it just becomes natural to have that culture and that mentality. And we haven't got that. And as much as I love Kane and I love Son, they are part of that culture as well. They're all part of that culture. The whole club. I'm not blaming Kane and Son, and Dier's been shit at times, but like Kane and Son are obviously, Kane's on one plane, Son's a bit below him, and then, but like, yeah, and he is right, and it is about time that somebody. I mean, managers have said it all the time, so I can understand it, and he's not wrong. He isn't wrong. A lot of the things he said are completely right, but obviously, from my point of view, he's not set, because if he'd have signed a 3-year contract and he'd come out and had that rant, I'd be like, great. So let's sort it out now. It's out in the open. You've said it. We know how you feel. Let's change this culture. And if we've got to get rid of certain players, no matter who they are, let's do it. That's what we all want. But the fact he's like done it for me is basically like, I've had enough now. I'm gonna give them both barrels, and I don't care of the consequences, because they're either going to get rid of me or I'm going at the end of the season anyway. And that's the whole thing about it. What I can't get on board with, the stuff he said, a lot of it is bang on true and needed to be said. And some of them players, the way Conte said it, and the fans, knowing that the fans, like you'll know it on socials and just how things are now, they'll see how people feel about it. You know, a lot of people have said, yes, it's about time they heard that. You know, it's about time they had some harsh truths. And that is right. But I feel it was done partly out of anger, but I think it was more done for Conte's benefit and that self-preservation than it was to actually improve Tottenham Hotspur, if you get what I'm saying. Because he's not there to carry out... He's not there to practice. He's not going to be there to practice what he preaches.
That's the point that I've made today.
Like, just go then.
That's the point that I've made today, is that he kept saying all season, we need patience. It's going to take 3 windows. It's going to need patience. And he hadn't, committed to even say that there was talks, and then that he was going to extend his contract. And then he's saying, we need patience. It's like, you can't give us patience if you aren't going to commit that. And the players know that. The supporters know that. And yeah, a lot of what he said in that part, I do agree with. Things do need to be done and changed, but you can't say all of that stuff and then swan off as well, because then you just left us as the fans completely stuck. If he had that kind of passion and that want for the change and that sort of feeling that he wants to do right by everybody, and he was going to stay, then I'm all for it. I tweeted to say that, if he was going to stay, we would think, it needed saying, and it was said, and what we're going to do something about it now. But to just say all of that and almost like mic drop and then walk off,
he's just
we're left. We're just left in the situation going. I think I said something along the lines yesterday. we're already a laughing stock. I was getting West Ham fans tweeting me yesterday. Like, it just gave them more fuel. And I know, it's what I mean. It's ridiculous, isn't it? And they were saying on Specialist News today, they think it's the most outrageous press conference that they've had in the Premier League. Now, that's probably a bit dramatic, but it's probably close because it was quite unexpected. Even if he is a bit erratic, it was unexpected. And, it's just given all these supporters and all these people just this, and I think I said something along about Kane going off to England duty as well. It's like, I always hate England duty anyway, because can't he just do what Man United players do and be injured and not go to international duty? He always turns up, plays every flipping minute, and then comes back. And then he's got, players going, oh, come to us and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then we've had even the manager saying, you don't want to be at Spurs, it's a waste of time. And I just think it just fuels all those people that just love having a pop at us. And we already have that already. And it's just, that's the bit that's made me cross. If he was going to stay, then I could respect that and think he wants to do something about it. But to just not say he's staying, which implies he isn't staying, then it's just annoying, really annoying.
It is one. I mean, sorry, I know you're coming to Jack. I'm amazed that none of the panelists understand why he's held off from talks. Baffles me. I think we all know why he's held off from talks, don't we? Because he wants to go back to Italy. He doesn't want to sign a new contract. Pretty simple.
Don't ask us for patience then, and wait for 3 windows.
So basically, so if he's saying those things, in my opinion, fair enough. But be there to practice what you preach. Otherwise, it's just an attack on the club. Now, I support Tottenham Hotspur. I support the crest on the shirt. Levy and his lot will come and go, whether I'm still here or not. Players will come and go. Managers will come and go. Ultimately, I support the crest. And it's basically an attack on the club if you're not going to stand there and practice what you preach. In my eyes, that's what it is. And I will always, when push comes to shove, I'll stick up for the club I support and love. So, sorry, Jack.
Paul O'Keefe. No, Paul O'Keefe tweeted, who is one of the more reliable people on Twitter. He only tends to tweet when he knows something. And he made a point, and I'm paraphrasing, that the relationship that Conte has a lot of respect for the board, Levy and Paratici and everything. I don't think him not committing to a contract has anything to do with the club not backing him or whatever. In fact, we've discussed this to death on these pods over the last few months, and the money that we spent on the transfer window supporting him. Is it enough to topple Man City and others to finish in top of the Premier League? No, of course it's not, because we're competing against oil nations and huge amounts of wealth. We're never going to be able to do that at this point in the manner that we are run in the current remit. That doesn't mean we haven't backed Conte. Conte has absolutely been backed. I don't think that's Conte's issue. Conte has not come out and said, I've not been given the players that I want to be given or whatever. We've given him. Perisic is his signing. There's no doubt Perisic was his signing, his wish. So we have backed him. The point about not signing the contract, I think, as we've said, is everything else that's going on around Conte. He doesn't want to be here anymore. He just doesn't. And I know I'm meant to be hosting, but I feel really passionate that Gibbo and Becky are right in that he can't say what he said. He can't say what he said and then not stay. If he'd signed a 3-year contract extension and said, I am going to be the one to sort this culture out. I am going to be the one that drives this club forward, and I am going to make this club successful. Say what you like, because recognise that you're going to alienate some of your players, and he knows who those players are, and those players know who they are, and know that he will outlast those players. He's in a position of strength. What he's done is said what he said, alienated a large proportion of our squad in all reality, in all likelihood, and they know they're going to be here long after he's gone. Because he's gone, if not this week at the end of the season. Anyway, sorry, Jack. Over to you. What's your take on that?
No, I don't really have a lot of comment. I think I don't want to rehash what you said. I agree with most things that are said. My biggest issues with him was, total. And I don't say that it's not unique to him, but managers in general often do this, is the lack of ownership of the problem. Because, I don't think anyone on this panel or anyone probably watching thinks that he has been exemplary in his managering, his decision making, his substitutions, his lineups, his tactics. I don't think any of us, we had that brief, fleeting, wonderful period of time where everything came together in that run last spring. But overall, I don't think any of us think that it's been brilliant. Certainly not 15 million quid brilliant per year, or some of you might calculate. I haven't done the math on this, but 50,000 an hour or whatever. So I don't think that. So not having any skin in the game, not taking any ownership over the problem, even if you're making correct points in certain areas. Now that crap about that he's trying to rewrite history about what he said the week before about seeing the fire, either that's misquoted or mistranslated for him in his mind, but he did say it. But he decided he didn't say it when he was asked that question, but it's a minor detail. So yeah, I think that that's what the problem is he doesn't seem to, and most managers don't want to take ownership of their own failures, because he's in self-preservation mode. When Jose was appointed, it wasn't Poch being fired. That wasn't the problem. It was Jose coming in, because I was like, first of all, I never a huge fan, and two, I knew exactly how it was going to end. There was no doubt. I talked to my wife. I talked to my kids. I said, I know where, and my said, well, maybe we'll get a trophy out of it. It'll be worth it, because I know he's going to implode at the end and everyone's going to hate him, but maybe we'll get a piece of silverware out of it. We didn't. Conte comes in. We'll just forget that interim period, who we had to convince he was close to taking the job, and then walked away, got left at the altar, the way I see it. And then only after we fire Nuno was he able to say, okay, well, I'll give you everything you want plus another 5 million a year, or whatever the deal that got him in to take the job on in November. But I was like, okay, well, I know how this is going to end, because it ends the same way everywhere else. It's hard to be angry at someone. It's like, I think Paul on the pod said something about if you have an attack dog, you can't be upset when the dog attacks, or something to that effect. I mean, that, so we know what we were getting. We knew how this was going to end. And the same thing I said to myself, well, I mean, he's better coach in my mind than Jose, at least evidence of recent history suggests he's a better coach, and that, yeah, we might get a trophy out of it. But again, we aren't. So moving forward, we need to have a manager who is going to stick with this club, who understands the club, understands the limitations, but is given enough time, like the lot up the street did, with someone to get out of the club who they don't want, to get the core players to buy into us. Now, granted, they play attractive football up there, but buy into a project and give it enough time to work, because we have enough money to compete. We don't have to spend as much as everyone else. We have enough. We're a top 10 world club money-making operation. We have enough money to compete and challenge for trophies. So we just need to have the manager that matches the club, and we haven't had that for 4 years.
Right at the end of that, sorry, Becky, go on.
I was just going to say, just kind of reading the chats before we kind of move on to who we think it will be, is people are saying there, 4 managers, same players. And I've been reading this, what feels like months now. He raves about Davis, and he's suggested he wants Dier to have a new contract. So there's 2 of the players that keep getting hammered, apart from people like Moura, for being here all this time and not being very good. Yet he said he likes those players and he wants them to continue to be at the club. So this sort of idea that it's 4 managers and it's the same players who have, they're the ones that apparently texting Poch and asking Poch to come back and all this sort of business, I don't believe. It's actually, we've got Kulusevski, we've got Romero, we've got Bentancur, we've got Porro, we've got Royal, we've got Danjuma, we've got Hill, Spence. There's players that aren't even here that we could go into a whole show about why, Conte didn't play them. So this idea that it is the same players that have thrown another manager under the bus, I'm not sure that's technically true. There are players that are still here, but not all of them are the same players that were here. right the way back to when Poch left. So I think that's it's a bit tiring to keep seeing that statement coming back saying, oh, it's the same players. And I'm not sure it is. It's whether they were players that Conte wanted or the club bought. There has been some change and there has been some development and there has been some money spent. So I think it's a bit unfair to say that it's do you see what I mean? See the point I'm trying to make, that it is just the same players and it's them that have thrown their toys out of the pram and they're the ones that have got another manager sacked. I'm not sure that's fair.
No, you're right, but there are players there that have been there through those periods. But there are more. That squad is evolving. Saturday, I think Phil's putting in here Forster. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Richie came off early. 7 players. I don't know, obviously, who came on. Royale. He's only recently come, hasn't he? So,
Sarkin.
I mean, they're more systematically that approach the players. There is something that needs to change. Absolutely, there is. But like a lot of these players are players who have come in under Conte. It's just literally we can't. There's too many. I know I might have it over with certain players, but what we tend to do is like we can't be Conte out and Levy out. You've got to be one or the other, and if you're not, then you're wrong and you're part of the problem. But like I've seen people say that Spurs have burnt another manager out with Conte, and in my opinion, they haven't burnt him out. That guy has had some terrible, like this year, 3 close people have passed away. Terrible. He's needed, he's had to have surgery where he was obviously really ill. Terrible. But his family aren't over here. You're away from your family. He's a human being as well. So why can't he just come out and say, look, this ain't working. I don't want to be here anymore, really. Because, I mean, whether people want to admit it or not, he does want to leave. If he stays and he didn't have that rant, he's going at the end of the season.
Yeah. It wouldn't be as toxic. His departure wouldn't be as toxic had he done that. And people would have completely respected that. Yeah,
exactly. You can respect that and get behind it. So instead of throwing out about, and I'm Levy out, I think we're not going to fully move on until the board changes. But the ultimate issue at this very minute is that this guy doesn't want to be the biggest Conte outer. Is Conte. He is the biggest Conte out person because he wants to go. So if he'd have come out and said that and we have to move on, we have to move on. But it's like he wants to get sacked. He doesn't want to just leave. But he's got no intention of being here. And there's a fucking bloke in here going, mind readers, calling us mind readers for what we're putting across. Yet he keeps putting points across, which he has got no proper inside information on. But it's just, this is my agenda, and I want you to agree with it. It's bollocks.
Because Conte's been so vague about things, we have to make assumptions because he isn't being necessarily that specific about it. I keep thinking about Mane. Mane came out and said he is going to leave Liverpool at the end of the season. Not Mane, Fabinho or whatever he's called.
No, it's Mane.
You're talking about this season. He came out. That was last and then this season there's another one, isn't there? Is it Firmino or Fabinho? He said he's going to leave the end of the season.
Firmino.
And he played and he came on against Man United and scored, and everybody cheered him. But he came out and said he's going to leave. He didn't then get, banished, and people respected for the fact that he's going to move on, whatever his reasons are, and we're just going to see that out. Why didn't Conte say something along the lines? If he decided that he wasn't going to continue, just say it. Because we would have been far easier to get behind him, knowing that anything that he then said would be far more respected, knowing what he was going to do. And I think people will then put in the comments, oh, he doesn't have to tell everybody what he's doing. No, he doesn't. But that's where it comes back to the mind reading thing. It's because he doesn't, we have to make assumptions.
At the end of that clip that we just played, right at the end, he says about changing the culture and that do Tottenham want to change the culture? And I think he was, and I guess it was a question about, well, actually, do the club really want to change this culture? The problem with the players are the biggest issue. There was an opportunity there for him to say, I want to stay and do that change and be part of that change and oversee that change. If the club want me to stay, it was sort of, and I don't know if you guys interpreted that, if you even picked up on that point about, if he really wanted to stay, why didn't he say at that point, actually, I want to stay and oversee that. If the club want me to, I will stay and sort this out. He never said that again. He just left it there. And it's almost like, again, what you said, Gibbo, I think, is part of the setting it up for the club to go. And he can turn around and say, well, the club didn't want to make the change. Yeah.
Have you got, I don't know if we've got it in here. We had it earlier on our group. There was a quote. I think Paul put it in. I'm not sure if he put it. I don't think he put it on our Facebook group, but he put it on a Facebook group he's involved of from Conte when he was in his final days at Chelsea. Basically, have we got that?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it did go in here.
I don't know if we've put it in, but it's very similar.
Same, yeah.
To what happened.
But I saw someone tweet the other day about how it said something like, "This club sacked, this club sacked, this club sacked, this club left by mutual consent," and it was kind of implying that it never really ended well, and he always ended up leaving on bad terms wherever he's finished up at. And I think Paul was saying, or was it Davo was saying, about how when he was sacked from Chelsea, he did an unfair dismissal suit, didn't he, against them?
Yes,
so
he did.
He knows, this is maybe why Spurs haven't come out and said anything at all today. They haven't been tweeting anything, so they have to be really careful what they do. But I've read all things about this week as well. They're like, Levy knew what he was getting when he got Conte, and then he didn't back him. And you're like, okay, not back him, not sure I agree with that bit. But yeah, they did. And we've talked about this on this show before. Was Conte arrogant enough to think that he would change Levy, or was Levy arrogant enough to think that he would change Conte? And that was like this kind of rumbling on, wasn't it, all the time, as to no one seemed to know the answer to that question. And now it's just ended in this kind of painful divorce, isn't it? But it's just like, if you get a win now manager, you have to, I read something today, they were saying about how he doesn't change the cultures of teams. He just continues to make them win because they buy winners, if that makes sense. He isn't a sort of manager that will kind of progress the team, which is why we're seeing this year that so many players have regressed under him and that's why he's getting cross, because his kind of tactics and his sort of formation that he is so rigid on and so stubborn about is falling down. And I still think his substitutions are far too defensive, and that happened again on Saturday. And then he's feeling, the heat from that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is quite interesting in terms of just to talk about the backing of Conte. Has he been backed in terms of being a checkbook manager? £192 million spent on 14 players, so an average player profile of 27 million. Compare that to Jose Mourinho, 131 million on 10 players, average player spend of 13 million. There's a profile of player there. And I know that's an average, and there's highs and peaks and there's threes in that. But as an average spend, it gives an interesting insight into what we have done under Conte, doesn't it? What's your take on that, Jack?
Well, I saw something, I don't remember who the person was saying, is that that Conte is a checkbook manager, and somebody made the analogy of he's the race car driver that wins as long as he's got the fastest car. And I'll be honest with you, I try to be humble about what I know and what I don't know. And one thing I'm not confident is I haven't followed Conte's career. I didn't watch him at Juve. I didn't watch much of his Inter. I obviously watched very closely Chelsea that year because we were trying to chase him down. So I saw that team play, and so I think clearly you can't just say he only has success when he has the best players at every position. Because I don't even think that Chelsea team, Hazard was out of his mind, but I think that Chelsea performance was pretty spectacular overall, though they didn't have any European football that year. It certainly helped him. But for me, I know that I don't have the ability to get into the minds of these guys and what they're going on, but the reality of the matter is everything you're saying is correct. He didn't commit to the club. It's always been this situation where is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? And that is on the board. The board hired him. They knew what they were getting, and they rolled the dice. And again, they rolled it twice on these sorts of managers, and it didn't work. Now, I don't know what the problem with the club's culture is. I don't know if the players, like he's saying, feel comfortable. They know that they don't have to really win anything to get paid really, really well. They've got these wonderful facilities, best training ground. Hell, it's fun to stay at the lodge. They got nice food. They got great grounds. And so they just aren't that interested in really applying themselves to the point where they're going to succeed. Maybe all that's true. But if that's the club you've built, then you need to find the leadership on the pitch that's going to give you some chance of being successful. And a Conte is not going to, I think if you put up Paul's, who thought they were going to change each other, because it doesn't look like the culture fit at all. And the fact is, we can talk about Enic leaving, right? But they ain't until one of us costs up $4 billion, they ain't going anywhere. Right. So, all this talk about that they need to go is irrelevant. So So we just have to get on with it and talk about, okay, who the hell are we going to bring in here to give this squad a chance of making us happy, at least to watch the freaking football. Even if they're going to lose, I'd rather at least watch the football that I want to see.
You bang on, Jack, aren't you? Because we all know, the board obviously appointed Conte, and it was never a great match. We were all happy because of what Conte's done before. It's a bad decision probably by the board again. But what we're trying to say is, with this board and how they and how they operate, that's why we need a different type of manager. We need a type of manager who doesn't do Conte things, who isn't going to demand that type of money, who's going to work under the restraints. But that money that people say that's not great money, but that is backing.
It's a lot of money.
That is for Spurs, which is our club, which we know how they operate. That is backing someone.
You think the Brighton managers would have loved that kind of money?
Yeah. If it's been,
look what they're achieving at a fraction of the dollars. Yeah. It's recruitment. It's this transfer record of this club is abysmal. Yeah. We don't have a stat, but the top 10 players.
We don't know. But we don't know, do we, Jack? That has it been spent well? We'll all say good. Certain players are good. I don't particularly rate Richarlison. I don't think that was 50 or 60 million well spent, but other people will say it is. But when you just look at purely at the figures, spending that much money, regardless on who it's on, is backing a manager to a certain degree, because we don't usually spend that type of money. So, in that respect, he hasn't been not backed, has he? He might not have got the exact players, but he has been given players.
Yeah. So do we now start? Talking about?
Paul's got a great question, though. I'm sorry. Do you see Paul's question?
So it's a great question. Now, I think just for context, and everyone's talking about in the group chat, it is widely being reported now across all media platforms that Conte is expected to be sacked this week by Levy, with Ryan Mason coming in until the end of the season when we look to make a permanent successor. I think when you see this level of consistency of noise coming out from the media outlets in the way that they have, and reported by well-respected media outlets, it's inevitable, isn't it? He's gone. Gibbo, agree? Yeah, Becky, yeah. So on that basis, Paul's asked a great question, and I think it is a good one. Jack, what would you ask him?
I think I might come up with a different answer if I have more time to think about it. But initially, my thought was, I see that I've read the transcript of the press conference, and I don't think he was backtracking. Where I don't believe this narrative that it was all attack on the board. I think he did unload on the players. 98% of his fire was on the players. So I want him to. I'd like him in a moment. I'd like to say, okay, who are the problems? Tell me, just between us blokes, we're not on the record. Tell me, who are the players you think need to get out of this club to change the culture? Or were you really talking about the man? Were you really talking about the board? That's what I want to know.
You could ask him that question after different games, and I think he'd give you a different answer, wouldn't he, though? That's the problem with him. I really don't think he knows that.
Probably.
Yeah. What would you ask him, Becky? Sorry, Gibbo.
Go on, Becky, go first.
I would ask him a similar sort of question, but what didn't he see in Spence and Hill and to some extent Danjuma. That's the bit I don't get. And
That's a good one.
I know we talked about what he saw in Royal, and then Royal kind of came good, didn't he? And there were pockets last year where Dier was one of our most improved players. Not this season. That's the bit I don't get, is that he asked for players, he asked for them, Richarlison, whether he wanted him or not, and he didn't maybe play them the way he should have done. And what is it that caused that? Because Danjuma, even today, is tweeting like this lovely smiley face out in his car, and someone put, why is he always smiling when he never plays? And I was like, yeah, it's just, what did they do that meant they got shipped out when we seem to want those type of players, those type of attacking players? That's the thing that was puzzled me.
Yeah.
I think I'd ask him. I'd just like to know when he agreed to take the Spurs job, and are we thinking that he's going to tell us the truth? We're going to ask him one question, he's going to answer truthfully. Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
I'd just ask him, when you took the Spurs job, what, how did you and Daniel Levy agree that this was going to go? Did you come in here expecting that you were going to be heavily backed, get all the players you want, or were you told you would get players, but you would have to work under certain restraints? I'd want to know what the terms of his job were, if you get what I mean. Do you get where I'm coming from? I'd like to know what the remit was and how it was going to work. That's what I'd really like to know. Because for me, when he took that job, I don't believe for a second that Levy promised him the earth. Yep, we'll get you Hakimi, we'll get you that. I think that he might have come in and been told how it works at Spurs, and I think he was up for the challenge at the start. And then obviously being at Spurs, how things end up transpired and went elsewhere. And I'd like to know. That's what I'd like to ask him. What's Paul said he'd
ask him what's changed between the end of the last season and the current one, and possibly all sorts of things like the World Cup and his health and
his personal relationships.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but yeah, it's let's move on then. So Conte, if you believe everything that you're seeing, and is imminently about to be dismissed as Tottenham manager, there were some comments about why not just get on and do it. I think it's more to do with the fact that the players will report back to training tomorrow, and the club will have the conversation with him at some point tomorrow, I suspect. Sorry, go on, Jack.
No.
Looking forward, this is, as of about an hour ago, the next Premier manager to leave. So Antonio Conte was in at 1-5. Gibbo, has that changed, or is that shorter odds now?
Yeah. Let's have a look. So the next Premier manager, mate? I'd be surprised if they're still taking bets on Conte. Let me have a look.
That one where it says no manager to leave, 18-1. What, now until the end of time?
Correct.
Surely there's a time limit on that.
End of the season.
Yeah.
Conte is
no manager to leave ever.
Conte is 1-20 to leave now.
Crikey.
So get your 20 quid on that, and you'll be 21 quid. You'll be £1 better off. And then the next Spurs manager, Mason, is 1-10. Pochettino 5-1 now. Glasner's out to 6s.
Really? So when we come on air, just over an hour ago, this was the latest situation. And you say, what's Ryan Mason now?
1-10.
Oh,
yeah,
it's done, isn't it?
So who's going to be Ryan's staff? I mean, is it the kit man? Because everyone leaves. Right?
Yaya Toure. He didn't tweet on Saturday or Sunday about what we get from being a coach and what we get from the club, and then something along the lines of really motivating. I just want a motivational character, because if nothing else, it'll motivate us.
He'd get respect, wouldn't he? Yaya Toure, big personality, big name about the place. Yeah, come in with Mason. For me, are we going to start this then, Craig? What are we doing? We going to ask who we want, or are we going to talk about what we think?
Let's talk about Ryan. Let's talk about the between now and the end of the season. I think if we, we'll happily discuss. Does anyone feel, based on what we've seen to this point, there's any alternative to Mason getting the job until the end of the season? Or do we all agree that's probably done and dusted?
Well, for me, mate, if you want Poch, I mean, there might be reasons why they don't, but if you want Poch or Tuchel or Luis Enrique, they're out there, aren't they? You could get them in now, start them looking at the players they've got, so they know what players they want in the summer to bring in what areas. Obviously, centre back, but if that's what you want, there's a good chance you can get them in now to start their work early, isn't it? So if you go in Mason till the end of the season, unless even though they're out of work now, don't want to get straight back in and want to wait till the end of the season, that'll tell you that it's probably not going to be them. For me, do you know what I mean? For me, if I'm there, I'm thinking, look, Conte's gone. Whether it's Poch, Tuchel, or Enrique, you're the guy we want. You're the guy we want to commit to. Come in now, get us as high as you can in the league, and then let's start building ready for next season. If it's Mason till the end of the season, I'm thinking there may be somebody else thereafter.
Yeah, guys, put in the group chat as well. Those listening, what's your view? Tell us your view on Mason as caretaker to the end of the season, or anyone else. Get someone else in now. Jack, where do you see it going? Do you think Ryan Mason, or do you think there could be someone else coming in?
I think it's unfortunately the only practical choice, because poor Ryan, actually, but if I'm a manager on the outside, I there's a lot of risk. You come into a club that is fourth. I mean, by some miracle, because the league is basically 2 teams and the rest of the 18. But I mean, if you drop out of the fourth, then you got that on your resume. If you keep them in fourth, then you get some credit for that. But I think the risk for someone coming in, even a Pochettino, is far too high. I wouldn't take it. I would wait till they see where the chips fall and then get in early. Plus, if you're the club, you want to see who might be available in the summer who's not available now. So because now you're limited to only people who don't have a job, and there's a reason they don't have a job. I mean, I'm not saying that Pochettino's a bad coach. I'm not saying that Enrique is a bad coach, but the reality is you'll have more choices in the summer than you do right now. So I mean, Ryan Mason's the only logical choices, and again, maybe you get a bounce. I don't know. I've ever heard of a new manager or interim manager bounce for 10 games, but you might get a bounce. You got some decent fixtures, manageable fixtures, theoretically, for most teams. Spurs may be the exception, but I mean, it seems that it would be the way I would go. I think, knowing what little I know, I think that's probably the way I would probably play it.
Here we go. Won't get any manager.
It's a funny one for me, because
that's such crap. Oh, sorry.
Not
that
you,
comment. That comment. I'm sorry. That comment's a bunch of crap.
It's fine. Don't worry. I knew what you meant. I agree. I've been reading the comments while you've been talking, and Poch is there, and Poch has said he'd come back. And then I've said before, I don't think Poch, if Poch returns, he doesn't return the same way. I've done a lot of thinking about it today. Mourinho had lockdown to deal with. Conte's had ill health and off-field problems. Poch had leaving White Hart Lane and playing at Wembley. We just don't seem to have had a time where it's just been Spurs at the new stadium and everything sort of in place. So Poch returns, it's different. He can start straight away. He can hit the ground running, and come back with different expectations and say to him, this is what happened last time. This is what went wrong for this reason. You didn't do this. We didn't sign anybody for 2 summers and da, 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 da. So it isn't the same. People are saying you should never go back to an ex. It's not the same. Poch will come back with an experience of being in Europe, managing in Europe, coming back and having a different perspective on things. And hopefully with some hindsight, even Levy isn't too arrogant enough to think, actually, yeah, okay, this is where we made a mistake and this is what we're going to do. So there's that side of it. If they do get somebody in completely new, we're back to that sort of situation where players that we've so-called signed this year might not suit, so they go. Players that have been sent on loan come back and they suit. And it's in a bit sort of a process again, isn't it? So it's whether we want things to work now and hit the ground running now, or we want a process, and a process has to be supported. And if Levy is prepared to support that process, and like we just said about other managers being given time then that's fine.
Just don't take
So-
4 flipping months.
Yeah.
Crying out loud.
To
Just don't
decide
screw
what to do. No.
Oh my! Just if they don't
Yeah.
repeat that.
Because then you miss all of the preseason. The players don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
There'll be players that'll be sent out on loan. They won't know what they're doing, and it's a mess.
Got a lot of players coming back to the club on loan. I mean, yeah, you're right. You
Yeah,
need someone
in
in
the
very
summer.
early. Yep. I agree with you, Becky, 100%.
Have you
Take
got
care,
a
guys.
shoot off, Jack?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I was gone.
Yeah, he's had enough.
I think. Yeah, I don't blame him. The thing about Mason is, I think it'll be interesting what happens. It's inevitable that Mason will go in as interim manager. Whether he goes in as interim manager at the end of the season is the point. So I think the communication that comes out from the club when the announcement is made will be interesting. Whether they say he's going to stay to the end of the season, or whether they say, for now, and a further announcement will be made in due course. I think we'll know the intentions of the club then.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it could go the other way. It could be exactly what we saw with Pochettino. Pochettino was dismissed on the night, wasn't he, at 6 a.m. the next morning? Mourinho was announced. It could go that way. We just don't know. But I think the shortening of odds for Mason is more to do with the fact it's obvious he's going to be some sort of caretaker or take charge of training or whatever, isn't it? It's just obvious.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean he'll end up being that permanent manager. But you're right. If that person, for me, is available now, why? And they're the choice of the club. Just go and get it done now. Give us the best possible chance of getting top 4 this season.
That's what it's about, isn't it, Craig and Beck? That's what it's all about now. Getting us the best possible opportunity to finish as high as we can. Whatever happens, it's got to make sure that we're getting the most points that we can available, not just drifting through to the end of the season. I don't particularly want it to be Mason. I mean, obviously a game or whatever, but sure, we're in this international break. If there's the person out there they want, I mean, they could even, if there's someone in a job, you can still try and buy them out their contract if that's who you're desperate for, can't you? That's what you want to do. But yeah, I think it will be Mason, but I think say if it was going to be Poch or one of the ones we've mentioned before who are out of work, if you're going to go and get them, I think Tuchel and Pochettino would have more chance of getting the dream of top 4 than Mason. I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Getting the top 4, finishing top 4, all that shit. But I think you'd have more chance if you got Poch or Tuchel in than if you keep in if Mason's doing it. I think a lot of players will sort of be, if it's Mason as caretaker till the summer, there are going to be games where they're going to run through brick walls for him when they don't know what's going to happen next year if he's not the man. If he's not the man who's like that they're trying to impress for next year, will some players be a bit like, look, just get it through?
I think there's a bit of respect for Mason, though, isn't there? Mason's been there when Conte was back at home, when Stellini was there, and people are putting in here about how he picked his mates. He played for the club, and there's loyalty there that he owes the club for when he was looked after, when he was in hospital, and I think he wants the club to do the best. We've read a lot over the last couple of months about we want a manager who wants to be here rather than for whatever reason does not want to be here. And I think that counts for a massive amount. If we even go back down to like grassroots football, people have got to want to do the job. They don't do it well if they don't want to do the job. So I think for lack of experience, that makes up for if you actually want it rather than just want the money, and the pay packet that will come inevitably is a very attractive job to have at Spurs. It's well paid. If someone wants to be here, I think that makes up for a little bit of shortcomings in other things, in other areas.
Who do you want then, Beck? Who do you want to get it? You want Poch, do you? What about you, Craig?
I want to enjoy football again. I'm already reading here people saying about nice football and no trophies. I don't think we've won any trophies with Conte.
We've had shit football and not good. We're not getting good. We're not winning trophies no matter what football we play, are we? So let's have it's got to be good football. If it's got to be shit football with no trophies, I'd rather have good football with no trophies.
We haven't won any with Conte, have we? So.
Yeah. No.
I think
for me, it's. Do you know what? As I've listened to the conversation and tonight, the panel and the people making comments in the group chat. I think it's not about a person. It is about a person, but for me, more importantly, I want Tottenham back. I want that united fan base
Identity,
that we had, the identity of being what it is to be Tottenham, the way we go out and play, the fan base being united behind a common, objective. We all knew what we was doing under that Poch project. We all knew where the club was going to. We all knew where we was trying to get to, and Pochettino brought into that. He was the figurehead for that project, and I thought the club was them years under them four of the 5 years under Poch was phenomenal. And I'm not saying I want Poch back, but I want that back. Whatever we've talked about this before in the pod, Gibbo, I think, and Becky, you remember we said about one thing the club needs to do, whatever it does next, is be very clear about what it is. What are we trying to do as a club? What's our ambitions as a club? What's our objectives? What are we trying? If it is another 5-year project, as frustrating as that will be, so be it. At least we know what we're getting into, and we know what we're doing, and we've got a manager in post that fits the profile of the club
and make it work.
The profile of the project and make it work exactly. And so that's what I want. Whoever and who can be that person? Well, if it could be Poch if he's got the stomach for that and he wants to do that. It could be. I've really got a thing for the Celtic manager. I can never pronounce his name. Postecoglou,
something like that, isn't it?
Postecoglou, yeah. I've really got a thing for him because of the football he plays, I think. And I think he's not the name that people will want, but we've had the names and they haven't worked either. And I think someone put in the comments, actually, forgive me, I should have started the message if I didn't. He made a comment about will Levy. I got it. I thought it's a really interesting point. You've read my mind. Does Levy admit that he made this mistake? Remember, he famously said, didn't he? Yeah, time will tell. Exactly. History will tell if I made a mistake in second Poch. But I think we can all agree that he made a mistake in second Poch. Yeah. I don't think he made a mistake in second Poch, actually, because that season was dreadful and where we was going was in our place.
They made a mistake by how he let it go, how they let the situation get to.
Exactly.
But, people might not agree in here, because there's been some discussion about it in the group. But I think if Poch is asked, he's fucking back there tomorrow, mate.
Yeah, I think so too. But Sky at 5:30, Sky at 5:30 said Poch will consider his options in the summer, and I thought, the whole point of him turning down all these jobs is that he was waiting for the right one that he could take immediately.
Yeah, I think he walks back, but I'm not massively sold on the Pochettino back. I loved the Pochettino era until it went tits up, and I don't want him to come back and it go wrong again, and it not be a success, because the good times were brilliant under Poch. I've not really got a massive look. This is the guy I want. I do like Frank at Brentford. I like how he adapts to different games from the start, different formations. How his teams can defend, they can sit back, but they can attack and play on the front foot, and they'll change. So I like him. I like the guy at I think Brighton. I watched them yesterday, and I know they were only playing Grimsby, but I think they're a great team to watch. I liked them under Potter because I like Graham Potter, but obviously he's at Chelsea now. The idea of somebody like Vincent Kompany coming in, even though it's very early in his career, I quite like the thought of that, But this guy Gallardo from Argentina, a lot of people talk about him. Will he be sort of like, given an interview, looked at? We talk about Fonseca again, but Paratici and him fell out. Whether Paratici will be there, I suppose that's a whole different show, isn't it? But Paratici will be there to pick the guy. Let's talk about. I've read some good things about the guy from Sporting Lisbon, Ruben Amorim, whatever his name is. I've read some articles on him in like the Athletic and on over the socials and that, and he looks interesting. I do not want somebody like Diego Simeone. That is where I do not want us to go down that route. But I do like. We spoke about it before. Weirdly, I always thought he'd be a good Tottenham manager. It's not going to happen. said to you, Craig, didn't I? I always thought Brendan Rodgers would be a decent Tottenham manager, but you've told me that the Leicester fans hate him, don't they? So
honestly, the Leicester fans would happily drive him to Hotspur Way, drop him off, and kick him out in the back seat. They hate him.
And my Dave didn't like him at Liverpool either.
Oh,
So
I think he's a helmet. I think he's a right helmet. I think he's, but I think he just always struck me as like a Spurs type manager. But I suppose that was an old 90s Spurs manager. Yeah. And I like Nagelsmann. I like Nagelsmann. I do like, I like what I've read about him and what I've seen from him. He's at Bayern now, but when he was at his previous clubs, I liked what I saw of him. So, but I'm the same as you. I think I want someone that the club and it's dreaming affairs and all that, like Cloughie used to say. But I want to see the club just say, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. This is the route we're going down.
Didn't they come out and say earlier in the week, it was leaked to say they wanted someone with Premier League experience?
What I want to see is I want to see Daniel Levy come up with. I want him to come true on his promise of the DNA of Tottenham Hotspur. Let's see what this DNA is. You're the head of the club, mate. You tell us what this DNA is going to be. And if it aligns with what a lot of Spurs fans want to see and how we want our club to be, we'll all be happy with that and we'll all support it. But let you set this DNA. You do that. That is your job to get that up and running. So for me,
Hotspur Sam. Yeah, no, I agree. Hotspur Sam said something that I said off air to you about Poch's caretaker to summer. Is that possible? Is that realistic? Would he do it?
Would he come back for 6 months? Well, even to like the end of May. Can he really do enough in that short time? Can he change?
I thought whether they would do. Do you remember the original Sherwood contract? It was actually an 18-month contract, wasn't it? Or just they gave him the next season, even though they had no intention of ever giving him that next season. And I didn't know whether there was something about that. If it's about Poch is available, he wants to come back to Spurs. Is that an opportunity for Poch to prove a point? Come back, 10 games, get us top 4, earn the job. I don't know. Is it possible?
Mate, I mean, we in the cheese as well, our group of friends in the cheese room and stuff, and obviously, but there's a feeling from certain people that who go to games and certain people at the club that Pochettino isn't going to be considered, isn't there, Craig? Mm-hmm. That he's not the one they want. There's a lot of sort of like opposition to it, Craig. Would that be the right word?
Yeah, fair.
So
I think everything we're being told, in essence, is that it will not be Poch.
But I can understand people wanting him back.
But if not Poch, then who?
Yeah, so shall we say who do we like? We've all said who we want it to be.
Permanent managers. So let's talk about next permanent managers.
Who do we think it's going to be?
Yeah, who do we think it's going to be? Next permanent manager, assuming
the Brighton guy would be a good one, but only if it kind of comes with the same sort of setup that Brighton have with their recruitment and their ability to kind of move players on quickly and
get good players
find youth. If that doesn't happen, then it's not. I think Brighton is almost like it's like a model that you kind of purchase and buy into, not just the person. The person who on their own. That's the thing. I think if it was him,
who do you think it's going to be, Beck? Do you think it will be Poch? Do you think it will be Poch? Do you?
I genuinely don't know. I don't know. I don't know more than anybody else does.
No, just. Who do you think it will be, Craig?
I don't know. I can't. I don't want it to be. I understand the logic about the obvious ones are Pochettino, Tuchel,
Mourinho, and coming back.
Enrique, because they're available managers, right? And out of those, Tuchel's obviously one of the most successful ones. But do we want to go down another ex-Chelsea manager again, for the third manager in a row, which inevitably will end in failure because recent history tells us it never works. So I don't want to go that way. And that's where I just don't know which way the club will go.
Super Tottenham's put a good point there that after Conte's interview, I thought this about players as well, because we said that a lot of the players that were signed, they talk about Conte, don't they? They wanted to come and work for Conte and sign for Conte. But now, after what he said, there's going to have to be some quite hard negotiation, isn't there, to get the next manager in, because I always thought after Mourinho left, I thought the things that he's going to come out with afterwards, how are we ever going to get somebody? And then when Conte declined it the first time round, I thought, yeah, he's wise to it. And then whether they increased his offer and then he came afterwards. But that's the other thing as well, is you've got to assume that these managers want to come and not just be paid easy, because it is easy, it's money that they'll get, be well paid for it. But that's why I keep going back to the whole idea of either have a project manager who isn't going to be paid that mega bucks but be given time to do the job right. Because we've worked out that buying the expensive managers and things don't happen quickly enough, they get annoyed and want to go back to Europe usually as well, because we keep getting these managers that are, they were good in this country a long time ago, but aren't proven now this country. If we're going to do it, then stick with a Premier League manager.
All football players, the majority of football players and managers have got big egos. And
back themselves, don't they? They back themselves.
Yeah. And if they're offered the right money and they're sold the right thing, they will come. Players are slightly different, I think, from the manager. Getting them, they want. But if, somebody will always think, I could be the bloke who wins Spurs a trophy. I've only got to win them a trophy, League Cup, FA Cup, because we win nothing. Do you know what I mean? So, when I used to be in the patron group early days, I got told Spurs ain't big enough to get Nagelsmann. They'll never get Nagelsmann. Bayern Munich come in, he went there. And I was like, well, if Bayern Munich hadn't come in, I believe we could have got him. Conte won't go to Spurs. We won't get Conte. Spurs, since what's happened to Mourinho, no, they're not going to come. He's not going to come to Spurs. He's far bigger than them. We're not at that level. Conte ends up at Spurs. So we've got Mourinho as well. Apart from a ridiculous, like your Klopp or getting Klopp from Liverpool or Pep from Man City, we'll get a good. If we want a top manager and they're available, we'll get them. We'll be able to get them, whether it be the money and the stroking of someone's ego, making them think that they can be the guy who does that. So I don't think I'd like to think we'll get the guy who the club want. Whether they choose the right guy is a different story. And who'll be picking them, because obviously is it going to be Perisic or Levy?
Can we just touch on that, because I think that's a really interesting point. Obviously, we've discussed in recent months about the potential ban Perisic is going to face from world football. Becky, who do you think picks the next manager? Is it Perisic or is it Levy, or both?
You'd like to hope that even if while he's still in post, there would be some communication between the two of them. Do you remember when they did that video, didn't they, of Perisic being all sort of, after it had come out, hadn't it? And he was then being all. I remember there being a video about him on Spurs Play about what he'd done and what he brought to the club, and you were like, oh, okay, the club are obviously backing him. And then they're waiting for an appeal, aren't they, to come? And I just don't know. It's what he's paid for. He's a director of football. While he's still in post, is he still the person to trust, or does Levy think, well, he's probably going anyway, and then he would just be the person that Levy would do it himself, because he thinks he would outlive him anyway, and he'd have to deal with it. That's the problem. It's always been that control element, hasn't it, with Levy? He tries to relinquish the control, but he likes to have the control. That's what's been tricky.
Who would you rather make the decision? if you could choose one of them to make a decision, which one would you want?
Well, when Conte came, didn't they, and the link to the Perisic, we were saying that's where we got the Juventus players from, and there's players that have played under Conte and Perisic, and that using that wealth of experience, it's surely got to be better than Levy's experience in that area. So you would hope that that's what they were employed to do, and that's where the trust comes. But then it comes out that there's been some dodgy dealings about it, it makes it difficult then to continue that trust, doesn't it?
Yeah. Gib, I don't know if you caught that line of that discussion point then. We was just saying about would it be Perisic or Levy that makes the next decision on the manager? And
Levy
out of
all
the
day
two,
long.
who would you want? And who would you, if you had a choice, would you want it to be Levy or Perisic that makes the decision?
Well, look, mate. For me, Paratici was the guy. He convinced Levy, didn't he, that Nuno was an attacking manager. So,
apparently,
Levy's hired a lot of managers and had some hits and some misses. Paratici has picked one, convinced Levy to get him in, and had an absolute stinker. So that is a tough decision, mate. I don't know. Didn't Paratici, wasn't he when we were having this like search for a manager, Gattuso and names like that? I don't know, mate. So, I'm thinking.
We all thought that signing or employing a director of football would stop Levy being involved. But like I just said, it's whether Levy can't relinquish the control or Perisic is actually not turned out to be as reliable as we hoped.
I think Paratici, but I think obviously there's a massive cloud hanging over him, isn't it? And I think with the Nuno thing, maybe Levy's once bitten and he thinks, give him one job to do and it's turned out terrible. I'm going to be, I'm going to have the final say on this now. But I think the trouble with Levy is, like, look, this could go on for ages, couldn't it? I just think he's a control freak, isn't he? He wants control over all those sorts of decisions, and I think he'll pick the next manager. I think he might get Paratici might give him a few sort of like, what about this? What about that? But I think Levy ultimately will make the decision, as I think he'll ultimately make the decision over Conte's future. So yeah, it'll be Levy, won't it?
Yeah. No. Okay. Great. Well, hour 36 in. I just wanted to looking ahead to our next Premier League game, Everton away. Who Mason as caretaker manager, Becky Gibbo. Who wins in terms of the players? Which player comes out with benefit of Conte going, and who ends up being at a detriment of Conte going, as an interesting point. So put you on the spot there, Gibbo. Who benefits from Mason coming in as caretaker manager and Conte going, and who is at a detriment?
I think it'd be interesting to see. I think. Well, I don't know. I don't think. If Mason goes back to a back four, then obviously is somebody like Porro going to miss out? Perisic, out if he sets up a back four, is he going to play those players? But somebody like Son could thrive again because he could go to like a 4-2-3-1 and free Son up again, so we could see the best of him. So maybe the attacking players will benefit, some of them, but maybe the wing backs might be to their detriment that Mason comes in for the next game. But I don't know how he'll set up. Mason maybe like, look, we've trained in 3-5-3-4-3 all season, so we'll stick with three at the back. But he might drop an extra man in midfield and just play two up front. So you're right. It's an interesting point. I can't say for definite until we sort of know if it definitely is going to be Mason and what he's going to do, how, who's going to benefit. But obviously there will be people who benefit and some will miss out. I'd just like to hope that, we can get a little bit more out of Son, because obviously we miss his goals and we miss him being the Son he is for us, because that's what got us where we were last year. And maybe Kulusevski as well, because those two were a massive part of what got us top four last season. So if we can get that front three really ticking again, we're back in business, aren't we?
I think also it depends on injuries, doesn't it? Because as you were just saying that then, I was thinking, well, we play 4-4-2. Davis is injured, so then maybe he can play Longley at left back, or he can play Royal at left back and Porro at right back. and have Dier and Romero in the middle, and then, you know, I'd assume you'd have Skipp and Hojbjerg in the middle, and then Kulusevski and Son, and then Richarlison and Kane up front. That's how you would kind of see it. But we don't know how injured Richarlison is, and we don't know how, you know, if Davis is fine, and Davis would prefer to play left back. So I think kind of the injuries that have kind of, and I alluded to this at the weekend, that, you know, when we were seeing them all lying down being sick in Korea in the summer, you know, and Arsenal are starting to get injuries, and there's, you know, it's the tricky part of the season where it's the intensity's there, but the injuries start and the fatigue starts coming in as well. It's how that plays as to who we actually have, because obviously we've lost Bentancur, and, you know, we talked last week about Lloris coming back. Bissouma might be back by then. We don't know.
Bissouma would be, I think, Beck, do you think, like, it'd be good to see somebody come in, wouldn't it? And we can start to see the best of, like, Bissouma when he's back. The Bissouma we bought from Brighton. Richarlison, get a little bit more out of him.
And Danjuma, while we've still got him. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Danjuma could come in, like, you could play a 4-2-3-1. Danjuma, you know, get him in there and freshen things up, and they're a little bit more free. We play, you know, play on the front foot a bit more. But then, like you said, with injuries, are we? If he wants to go to a 4 at the back, are we going to have the bodies to do that?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, hour 40. I think, without any breaking news, I think we shall look to call it a day there. Gibbo, thanks for your input tonight. I hope the discussion has helped calm you a little bit, because I know you're particularly frustrated at the moment.
No, mate, I'm great. It was great to come on here and, like, get it off your chest. And mate, you know, like I've always said, Conte's done all the stuff he's done, but I support Spurs. I'm not local. I support it for, like, HG, who's in the cheese room, put a piece on his Facebook earlier, and I'm one of those people that support Spurs because of, you know, the style and the swagger they used to play with, and the types of players they used to have, and so I do want to see. I don't like all the nonsense and crap that these managers come out with. Like when Pochettino towards the end used to talk in riddles, it used to wind me up. He started talk for someone, just started talking nonsense, and I don't like all that. I know it's probably what all managers do now, but I do want to see us play a more progressive style of football. I believe the team and the players we've got, when all fit, with a progressive manager, you know, can do what we're doing now. We're still good enough to finish top 4. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I'm a little bit nervous that it might go wrong, but, you know, we've been here before. So fingers crossed, you know, it'll all get done and dusted, and we'll start to see Tottenham, I say move forward. I mean, we're 4th in the league, aren't we? But
yeah,
you know, hopefully we'll get there. Yeah.
Well, top 4th in the league, still the 3rd highest scorers in the league at this point, but it's Tottenham in crisis. Becky, have you got your notifications on for tomorrow? Will you be keeping an eye on your phone?
Yeah, I tend to find out from the WhatsApp group now before I find out from, because someone else gets them and then kind of shares it. But yeah, I think if they're saying about they're only going to announce it at the end of the week, that would just be kind of the formalities, won't it? I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's my last show for a couple of weeks, because next week I'm not here next Monday, and the Monday after I'm at Everton, so I won't be doing the show on the Everton night. Yeah. So
well, I think I'm at Everton as well, Becky. Actually.
Oh, we'll definitely have to find it this time.
Won't be hard in there away, Stan.
Yes, for sure. No, for sure. All right, excellent. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Remember to like and subscribe. Really good chat tonight. Really good, good listeners as well. So yeah, final thing to say is, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.